Frontline healthcare workers in Manitoba will be first in line for a COVID-19 vaccine. This weekend, the province opened up 900 booking spots, and critical care Dr. Dan Roberts was hoping to secure one of them. And he did, eventually, but only after making 400 phone calls in the span of 12 very frustrating hours. The province says that more than 100,000 callers ended up flooding the line, and Dr. Roberts says there has to have been a better way to dole out the spots. Here's what he told CBC Winnipeg.
I was instructed to call a telephone number beginning at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning to book an appointment if I met the eligibility criteria.
And how did that go?
Not well. It took me 12 hours to get booked. So they claimed that the call center was running 24/7, but they basically closed shop at 4 p.m. yesterday, and they started again at 6 o'clock this morning. So I set my alarm clock for 5:55 and began calling shortly before 6, and still was unable to get through. I was on the phone for literally 12 hours, and so were many of my colleagues, and I'm sure many hundreds of nurses work in intensive care.
Did it kick you off the call at any point, or were you physically on hold?
Yes, I got through. There were stages, and then they would tell you they didn't hear you 3 times, repeating the message, saying, "I can't hear you," and then they'd kick you off the line. The line would go dead. Then occasionally you'd get through, and then they'd play piano music for about 8 minutes and 30 seconds, and then they'd kick you off the line. So that happened to me about probably 75 times.
How frustrating is that?
Yeah, it's frustrating. I kept messaging people I report to within Shared Health to look into this. I got very unsatisfactory answers. You know, what they should have done, in 5 minutes, a high school student could have told them how to do this, right? So you have 900 doses to distribute. You probably have somewhere between 600 and 1,000 eligible people based on their criteria. So you get the managers of each care service to submit a list of employees that meet the criteria. They have full employment records. This could have been done days ago. And then they could contact these people and contact them and make the appointments. There would have been a civilized way of doing it. Instead, they ran this, what appeared to be an insane lottery. I'm sure there were hundreds of nurses who fit the criteria. You know, they're sitting there wondering they're going to be able to get a vaccine or not.
The province is blaming the problem on people who are ineligible, flooding the line.
That's completely absurd. They don't know what they're talking about. They're completely incompetent.
That was critical care Dr. Dan Roberts speaking with CBC Winnipeg reporter Holly Carrick yesterday. Another major U.S. sports team is changing its problematic name. This afternoon, Cleveland's Major League Baseball team confirmed that it would be dropping the word Indians from its name. That announcement follows decades of pressure from people including Sundance, a Muskogee activist and the executive director of the Cleveland American Indian Movement. We reached Sundance in Cleveland, Ohio.
Sundance, how long have you been fighting to get the Cleveland's baseball team to change its name?
I became executive director of Cleveland American Indian Movement in 2007, I believe, and that was my second demonstration. So since 2006, about 14 years or so now.
And now today they're saying that the time has come, that this is this name has to go. What does that mean for you?
Well, it means that the work that we have done in the Native community has paid off. It means that the 50 years that this organization has called for Cleveland to change its name, change its logo, that we are finally fulfilling one of our key missions. And so we are elated to hear that they are pursuing the change. Won't be a moment too soon, I might add.
Well, not a moment too soon, but the owner, Paul Dolan, said that it's time that the name is no longer acceptable in our world. But in the same instance, he says he doesn't know what it will change to or when. That for the time being, in 2021, is going to remain the Cleveland Indians. How do you feel about that?
You know, we were not part of that discussion with the franchise, and we believe that part of the reason was our insistence on them immediately ceasing to use the Indians name. We feel that they have a perfectly good name, calling themselves Cleveland Baseball until they rebrand. So, like I said previously, not a moment too soon, and we will be happy when the change finally comes. It's making us a bit wary, these fancy words and no action. Time for action has come, I think.
Now, the reference to calling itself just by the name of Cleveland is similar to what the NFL's Washington football team did, wasn't it? So you wanted them to follow that same route, is that right?
That is correct. And in July, when they announced that they were considering changing the name, we issued a statement of actionable steps, and that was point one, to immediately stop using that name and call themselves Cleveland Baseball until they rebrand.
There's also this issue that's already been dealt with, I guess, of the mascot or the image of Chief Wahoo, which is on the logo, it's on all of the merchandise. Can you tell us what that was and when that was actually eliminated?
2 years ago, the franchise came out and said that it was time to get rid of Wahoo. This was a gentleman's agreement between the commissioner of baseball and the owner of the Cleveland franchise. And at that time, Cleveland would not have Wahoo as a logo on the jersey, but they would still sell the memorabilia with that logo in the Major League Baseball shop.
How much support is there in Cleveland to have this name change?
Well, I mean, that would depend on who you ask. So sports fans, as you know, fan is a short hand for fanatic. There are many hardcore Cleveland sports fanatics who will resist the name change at any cost. But going out to opening day, as I have the last 14 opening days, and talking to many of the fans, many fans think that it's long past due to get rid of the Indians and Wahoo and make this change. So I think that perhaps Cleveland baseball will see its fan base change in some respect.
It's also something that Paul Dolan said in his interview. He said that it was a learning process for me, and I think when fair-minded, open-minded people really look at it, think about it, and maybe even spend some time studying it, they'll come to the same conclusion. Do you think that that's happening? Do you think that there is that people are actually giving this some consideration, realizing how offensive it is?
Well, I mean, those words are accurate, but what has not been addressed is the 100 years of propaganda that was woven by the sports team and the local newspapers, citing that the name change was somehow a democratic process by Cleveland fans and honoring Louis Sockalexis, who was the first openly native person to play baseball. So, you know, it is this narrative that they have spun in the last 100 years that prevents people from actually understanding what is going on. In Cleveland, every institution parrots this same narrative. It's patently false, but until the baseball franchise says to its fans, this narrative is patently false, fans will continue to believe it.
Do you have a suggestion for what the name should be?
No, I don't have an agenda in that respect. My agenda simply is to ensure that the team name and logo does not reference Indigenous people in any way, shape, or form.
Sundance, it's good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
That was Sundance, the executive director of the Cleveland American Indian Movement in Cleveland. In an interview with the Associated Press, owner Paul Dolan said the new name will not have Native American themes or connotations to it. The AP also reported that profits from sales of merchandise in the future that feature the mascot Chief Wahoo will go to Indigenous organizations or causes supporting Indigenous people. When I close my eyes and look to the year ahead, I see a grayness and also a yellowness. And so do the trend-predicting hurus at the Pantone Color Institute, who have deemed Ultimate Gray and Illuminating Yellow 2021's colors of the year. Each year, Pantone's experts pick a color they say will dominate product design of all kinds. One defining color, like last year's classic blue, which they said would instill calm, confidence, and connection, and highlight our desire for a dependable foundation on which to build as we cross the threshold into a new era. Yeah, I know, they blew it. But this year they're back for the win with an outside-the-line selection of not one, but two colors. Tones they describe as practical and rock-solid, but at the same time warming and optimistic, which I would describe as hedging and at the same time your bets. Twitter users have been throwing their own shade, saying the color combo is suspiciously reminiscent of a yellow banana taped to a wall with gray duct tape, which is a great snack storage idea, but also a much-mocked and very expensive work of art by Maurizio Catalan that may have been viewed admiringly by the kind of person who works at a color institute. Still, Pantone might be right on the money. Seems unlikely that a cheerful yellow could match the mood of 2021, but who knows? Pigments might fly. Here's Cyndi Lauper with True Colors.
Have been listening to As It Happens on CBC Radio. Our show is distributed in the U.S. by PRX.
You can listen to As It Happens anytime by downloading the CBC Listen app. I'm Chris Howden.
And I'm Carol Off. Thanks for listening.
KUOW-FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham. Support for KUOW comes from Delta Dental, reminding the community that in addition to hand washing and flu shots, healthy habits include oral care. Scheduling's available for year-end appointments. More info and a list of participating dentists at deltadentalwa.com.
Hey, I'm Neil Patrick Harris.
Hey, this is Maggie Rogers. This is Lauren from Churches, and you're listening to Q.
You're listening to Q.
And you're listening to Q with Tom Power, with Tom Power.
In 2020, when the pandemic hit, a lot of musicians took it upon themselves to help you cope. Today on the show, you're going to hear from two of them. Yo-Yo Ma is probably the most famous cellist in the world. And back in the spring, his performances on social media brought a lot of people comfort when they most needed it. It became his project to give people comfort and hope. And now, his new album does just that. Yo-Yo Ma coming up live in just a minute. Plus, back in the 90s, the Goo Goo Dolls song Iris was one of those songs you'd listen to while staring out a rainy window. Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls will tell you about their new holiday album and reflect on how that song, Iris, changed their lives. All that coming up on Q.
Live from NPR News, I'm Shay Stevens. President-elect Joe Biden is again calling for unity now that the Electoral College has confirmed his election victory. In a speech from Wilmington, Delaware late Monday, Biden also criticized Republican efforts to overturn voting results in swing states. As NPR's Miles Parks reports, he noted that some electors had to cast their ballots under duress.
It was very clear how unbelievably polarized the environment is right now. The Michigan State House where this meeting was held, they locked down the entire Capitol because of credible threats against this process. Arizona didn't disclose the location of their meeting until after the meeting had already happened for similar reasons. And so I think you saw Joe Biden talk about that a little bit in the speech where he was basically kind of reaming into President Trump for continuing to fan these conspiracy theories, which have led to real credible threats against these election officials who are real people.
NPR's Miles Parks reporting. Healthcare workers across the nation are receiving doses from the first batch of a new vaccine against COVID-19. KUNC's Matt Bloom was on hand as several dozen Colorado doctors and nurses received their shots on Monday.
Colorado's first vaccinations took place inside a makeshift clinic at a hospital in Fort Collins. Respiratory therapist Kevin Londrigan was the first person in line to get a shot.
I feel it's the light at the end of the tunnel. We're still going to have to wear masks and do social distancing, all just common sense stuff, washing your hands. I mean, the vaccine isn't the end of it, but it is the light at the tunnel.
The first vaccinations came as the U.S. surpassed 300,000 deaths from COVID-19, and new cases continue to surge in much of the country. It'll take months for the vaccine to become widely available. For NPR News, I'm Matt Bloom in Greeley.
Big tech companies are facing more pressure from regulators in Washington. As NPR's Bobby Allen reports, the Federal Trade Commission is giving the companies 45 days to reveal the kind of data that they're collecting on American users.
Sacrificing the privacy of your personal data, it's often said, is the price we pay for free social media. Now the FTC is demanding tech companies to turn over documents showing exactly how that data gets used. The request is particularly aimed at how Amazon, Facebook, and Twitter determine what ads are shown to consumers and how personal information is fed into algorithms that shape what people see on social media every day. The sweeping order also includes TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and Reddit. Law enforcement officials and regulators have grown increasingly hostile to tech companies. Google and Facebook are now facing federal lawsuits alleging the companies abuse their power and operate like monopolies. Bobby Allen, NPR News, San Francisco.
Facebook and Amazon are NPR financial contributors. You're listening to NPR News.